Good evening, everybody. Today is Tuesday, July 28th, 2020. My name is Bill Woodcock,
And I'm Jason Booms.
and you are watching or listening to another episode of Forward Maryland. Jason, how was your weekend?
It was fantastic, Bill. It was very restful. Had the opportunity to decompress for a while, watch some quality programming as well. I've learned a lot about extreme trans-Neptunian objects the other day. And that was just one episode of Friends. So I think, there's a lot of educational programming on TV.
You know, Friends is one of the many TV shows that I have never seen one episode of.
Honestly, I've only seen 4 or 5 episodes myself. I mean, it just, I never got the appeal. I don't know.
Another series, same time frame, same network. In fact, I believe even same evening
Mm-hmm.
that I never saw an episode of Seinfeld.
Really?
I mean, I get all the jokes.
Yeah.
I get the Glamour magazine. I get the Soup Nazi. I get, not that there's anything wrong with that. I understand what they all are, but I never ever watched it.
I've only seen it in repeats. That's when I tend to catch it. I've seen probably maybe 20, 30 episodes, I'd say, over the course of history. I do have a lot of folks tell me, oh, it's Larry David, you'd love it. Oh, you should watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, you'd love it. I watch it, I just get irritated. So I'm not sure what that means.
But I think that does mean that people think you love getting irritated. Larry David's whole thing is to be irritated. Everybody in Larry David's world is just generally irritated.
Yeah, am I supposed to find joy in that? I don't understand.
Well, we do use social media.
Yeah.
That. And on the subject of irritating, we are about to do that for at least some people observing this broadcast for the next half hour or so.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, today is day 138 since I know I was sent home from my employer and told not to come back until this coronavirus thing blew over.
Mm-hmm.
That was almost 20 weeks ago, or as your Anglophilic self would like to say, 10 fortnights. Yet we have people who, in that short 10 weeks, I mean, I have examined many a online MPH program, but there must be some sort of online accelerated crash MPH program in epidemiology, plus master's degrees, if not full PhDs, in immunology and population biology, which qualify all sorts of people to opine as to whether or not the coronavirus pandemic is past us and whether or not it's okay to open stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And as we have seen, none other than Major League Baseball, a multi-billion-dollar-a-year corporation with franchises worth each in excess of $1 billion. We have seen them in the last few days with the Miami Marlins situation stumble and trip over their reopening. Yep. So Major League Baseball is having problems in doing this correctly, yet there are still millions of Americans out there who believe that say, for example, our 59,000 student, $1 billion a year annual budget, Howard County public school system will be able to do this right, and teachers and staff members will add hazardous materials handlers to their job descriptions. Mm-hmm. Maybe Shakespeare said it, Jason. Maybe he didn't, but I will pose the question to you. Mm-hmm. What manner of madness may this be?
Oh, that was Mindy Kaling who said that. I'm 95% certain. But
that's another 90s thing.
Mindy Kaling is more current.
I at least saw. Was she 2000s? I mean, I at
The
least saw
Office.
The Office. I
Yeah,
was on Netflix.
yeah.
All right,
But
2000s.
okay,
Okay,
we're slowly moving up to the current day.
I'm
Um,
getting.
this is a situation where it just you read the coverage of this, and you read about it in social media, and you see all these experts, to your point, who want to say, well, I mean, there was a survey taken, and it showed that most people taking the survey favored some sort of hybrid approach. Well, to be honest with you, there are some cases where you can't rely on the will of the populace when they are not experts on this particular matter. And you have to rely on the voices of public health officials and other experts who are capable of saying, who have the training to say, this is a very, very bad idea. If half the Marlins have COVID-19, one can only imagine the risk we're putting teachers, children, administrators in by having folks sitting very closely into a classroom. And we know kids, particularly as you're younger, won't necessarily abide by the social distancing practices because they're kids. So who knows how, what the opportunities are for super spreaders to really cause some serious problems to the greater public health come August, September. So it's just extremely irresponsible for those folks that are out there. And miraculously enough, they're often the same folks that are touting reopen Maryland, reopen businesses, reopen the schools, and let's really not care what happens in the schools themselves. But perhaps not surprisingly, it does seem as though, again, there's an overlap of folks who are the reopen folks, as well as the anti-redistricting folks, that seem to have an issue with Howard County teachers as well as Howard County Public Schools. So you got to ask yourself, are they motivated by science, or are they motivated by some ideological predilections?
Well, I think that is a very valid question to answer. And I do think that when you get into the answer of that, that answer goes straight down the line. It goes straight down to what passes for conservative thought in 2020. And, William F. Buckley Jr. and Bill Safire would not just be spinning in their graves, but their coffins should have been huge because they're probably going through it like gyroscopes right now to see what actually passes for conservatism in the third decade of the 21st century. You mentioned the Howard County experience as a microcosm of this on nationally, and I think it's a very apt comparison. And let's dig into that a little bit deeper. So we have a cadre of people who are angry, upset. They can't get their way because of school district redistricting. They can't get their way because they're anti-school equity. Let's just have the rich schools adopt the poor schools. Let's just do material and supply drives for the poorer schools, which I believe a few of those things actually happened, and those were actually nice gestures to do. But just giving people stuff is not going to solve that issue. So we have this gang of well-heeled misanthropes who exist in Howard County, and they may not be as well-heeled elsewhere, but they certainly do stand for as misanthropes, and also as these people who think that the game is rigged against them. And unfortunately, these are in many cases people who have taken advantage. I mean, it's a little bit odd when the man rages against the man. It doesn't make sense. And these people, at least in our little locality, frankly, they're the man. If you live in a certain area and you're feeling disenfranchised over your school district, West Columbia, Clarksville, points west in this case, you really don't have much to bitch about. So these also line up to be very conservative people. And as you said, these are the people who are all over reopen Howard County, reopen Maryland. I saw now there was some sort of ridiculous trash called Back the Blue rallies that I guess there was one in Baltimore that about 30 people went to. And nutballs over from the West are talking about back the blue or else our republic is at risk. The radical left will take over. And it's all of this, it's all this ideology that we're talking about. Now, all of a sudden, not listening to public health has become part of it. It absolutely doesn't make any sense. And the part about it that makes the least amount of sense is that their only argument is enabled because public health approaches have worked. Their argument, when you get down to talk to any of these people who aren't busy writing all caps messages on Facebook and, using their little teddy bear filtered face to call people lunatic, their argument is most kids don't spread the coronavirus. Coronavirus mostly kills older people. Therefore, we should open up schools because schools contain mostly all kids. And so they're not going to spread it and they're not going to hurt anyone. That falls out when you realize a couple of things. One, they're not thinking about teachers, staff members, administrators, paraeducators, visitors, workmen, whoever, who fall between the ages of 18 and 65 or over. They are failing to acknowledge that the fact that there have been measures to stop the spread or to reduce the spread, i.e. masks, social distancing, hygiene, have enabled, at least in Maryland, the virus to be relatively contained. And three, it may be relatively contained, and I'm saying relatively compared to Florida, Texas, a few other places, but it by far is not over because even by the governor's own admission, the caseload, the number of cases between under 40s, certainly under 35s, is going up at quite a rate. No, we're not at the place where we were back in April or May, but there's the potential to get there. And we don't want this thing to expand. We want it to keep a lid on it. We want to reduce it. And so the only way to reduce that is to keep on with these processes, keep on with these procedures. Therefore, it gets back to my point. The only reason these people can even make these arguments is because they're not in bed sick already, or because they're not on ventilators like Herman Cain, or because they're not dead. And the only reason that they're complaining that this stuff doesn't work, but the reason why they only are allowed to have this argument, they only are allowed the standing to argue because it does.
I mean, and the numbers, I mean, we're up to what, slightly over 148,000 fatalities due to COVID-19. Is that number correct? It sounds right. And if we had just taken the stance, I know perhaps it's easier to look back and say, well, we should have done, but simultaneously, just by observing the facts on the ground, it does seem as though approaches such as what happened in New Zealand have been very effective at containing the outbreak there. And people's just the willful ignorance that you see to ignore science is just extremely troubling. That and plus the corrosive nature of those conversations as well. I've seen people that are sort of gleefully talking about the prospect of furloughing teachers, or if if they don't send the children back to school as they want in person, maybe the schools should lose their funding. Or talking about, passing along memes that talk about, quote unquote, the ignorance of our teachers. These are not the signs of anyone who has any deep attachment or care for what's going on in the public schools. And it's completely uncivilized. I just don't understand how anyone with children in the schools or have gone through Howard County schools would adopt these positions. But nonetheless, there you have it. I mean, it's just very, very corrosive rhetoric right now that doesn't seem to indicate any sense of compassion for anyone attached to the education process.
Well, to draw an allegory to Dante, there are varying levels or rings of, pardon my language, folks, trigger word coming up, chicken shit. and so here is where I see the chicken poop having rings. First off, yes, there are the dim bulbs who can, of course, suggest for others, but oh, far be it that affect themselves. And, like I can think of a certain failed candidate for school board in the most recent election who falls into that category. But the people who talk about, sure, it's easy, let's just furlough teachers, blah, 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 blah. As I have said in other forums, and I believe on this podcast, these are people who haven't done a damn thing in their lives. They haven't sat on a board of anything. They haven't had to actually be responsible for anything. They haven't created, they haven't built, but they have a keyboard, and so that gives them power. So there's that level. Then there is the ring of people who are well-intentioned, who fight back. And I'm personally not a huge fan of extremism on either side, but I do see that as far over to one side the negative people can be, there are some on the other side who can wrestle in the mud with the pig very well. And not my preference. I rather we keep things fact and evidence based. Not my deal. So not good. Not the best. If you don't argue with an idiot, there's only one idiot arguing. However, the worst ring, the innermost ring that I can see are the people who have ideological agreements with the jerks who are anti-science, anti-everything, who don't shut them up. And that is a disturbingly silent group, especially because, again, to use your parallel, these are the same sort of people, to throw a national comparison, these are the Lincoln Project people of Howard County. And of the state of Maryland. These are people who may be more conservative minded, maybe a little more libertarian minded, and they realize that these measures are good things, but, and they might do them, or they do them in their own way, but they're not going to lend a voice towards shutting these nutballs up. And to me, that's the worst crime of all. If you stand against this, you have to go out and you have to call it out. And like I said, while there are some people who I consider my friends, who I think are awesome, who I think let these people get their goat a little bit too much and get a little bit fired up, and surely I know I've been guilty in my day of a disproportionate response to someone's insult. At least somebody is standing up for what they believe in. but these so-called principled conservatives who, you know, to coin one former elected official's MO, well, I'm just a regular guy who wants limited government, and then to let, you know, these lunatics run rampant, to me, it's just unconscionable.
And those folks have just made the problem just so much worse. And the tragedy of many tragedies is that they knew better. They could have stepped up. They could have taken the moment to say, you know, this is actually the right thing to do. Had we had the hard shutdown for a month, we could be in a much better situation, experience the pain, rip the Band-Aid off, and have something approaching more of a normal quote unquote existence. But not to get into any specific personalities or individuals. I mean, you can just tell from the public discourse who is willing to be a voice of reason and who's not. Now, granted, many social media platforms do not lend themselves well towards thoughtful public discourse, with the quick hit being very, very easy to do.
To say which one does? One that does.
Oh, if only that was developed. But it's just the people who want to feed into that as well. It's the folks that are saying these things. It's the administrators, the moderators of our time who are letting these conversations take place. No fact checking going on. They're individuals who I frankly think they benefit from having these conversations because they can gather more attention for their particular interests. You don't see the focus as it should be on the well-being of the citizenry. And that's a very depressing thing, particularly those who actually hold or want to hold public office.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, well, yeah, that is an amazingly good point, because when we're talking about, people who just ran for office, mm-hmm. or people who, are thinking about it and are planning to do it, this gets into much broader issues of the future of our society, right? Mm-hmm. I took a little bit of time to watch Joe Biden today, mm-hmm. and give a talk. And
on TV or through a window?
On the TV.
Okay.
And one of the things he said, which was very interesting, because I will vote for Joe Biden. I will also say I do not have a firm picture of what makes Joe Biden tick independently. What is his raison d'etre, to use one of my favorite phrases. But one of the things he said is, and this was interesting because it helped me learn something about him, was that in a democracy, you just can't have your way. You have to pull people together, and there has to be a consensus. And, he went on further to say that he believes in a mostly progressive consensus, but, he's also, then went from there to touting his ability to work with both sides of the aisle or not, and all that. And so that is very telling, because we do live in a democracy. We do govern by consensus. You just can't spew off on your keyboard and say, I think we need to furlough all the teachers, or rip out blanket comments like all teachers are lazy, or this Board of Education had since March to work on this. What the hell have they been doing? Mm. And, get all the likes from the same, crew of schmoes. Mm-hmm. You wind up going into office with that attitude, you're going to find yourself mighty disappointed and also mighty disappointing. And you go in there on a herd mentality. As we've seen, at least in our little local school board, that same herd will ride you right back out too.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's the thing too. I mean, you get folks like this, and you see them at the national level too. Congressman Getz, Congressman Jordan, and to be fair, I mean, both parties. I don't want to state any moral equivalence, but both parties have had folks that are not particularly effective legislators because they're sort of into their own world. I think we're seeing a far more menacing threat to the republic, perhaps, coming from one side than the other. I don't see that interest in what some of our founders, not to hold them up as great paragons of virtue, many of them weren't, but there was this interest in something called legacy. They gave thought to how the future might possibly remember them. Now, granted, some of them went horribly awry with that, just given the way they led their lives and some of the beliefs they held. But there at least was a thought towards what do I want to be known for in the future? And some of these folks, you think they get into public office and you don't see them concerned about those longer term issues. Everything is a short term calculation. What'll help me win the primary? What'll help me avoid getting primaried so I can just sit down, do this job, and earn whatever money I make doing this. It's
Right.
extremely short sighted, and it's very discouraging for the health of the nation.
Yeah, it is. And what's disheartening is that the exact opposite should be true, right? I mean, this is exactly the time when we should all be going, how come we're not fixing this? I mean, I love to go to the next level. I think this is a terrific opportunity to start fixing things that are wrong.
Mhm.
I wish it was in our national discourse. I wish it was in our discourse at some level to talk about why the heck do we need a 40-hour work week? Why do people need to commute into their work? Aren't we being pretty productive now? This should be providing such a great opportunity to rethink society, and above and beyond everything with social justice and racial and ethnic inequities that have also been, at the forefront of life for these last few months. But instead, we can't even get out of the starting gate. I mean, we're busy talking about whether or not, there can be more than 10 people in a 7-Eleven,
Mhm.
and that's a fight.
Mhm.
And what hope do we to aspire to bigger things if we just can simply go, you know what? How many people are in a 7-Eleven is a fight not worth having.
Mhm.
You know what? Whether or not to open schools is a fight not worth having. Or to do online or hybrid or whatever. You know, I get it. I get that there are people who do get very economically hit and hurt by lack of daycare, lack of childcare, all sorts of things. I will also submit to you that the people who are raising all of this big stink do not belong to that population. They have access to childcare, they have access to daycare, and yet that is maybe, that is the biggest thing. It is like the clog of hair and yuck that is blocking up the drain from working properly, which is you have these very privileged people acting like they're not, and because they're very loud and they're very insistent and they're very aggressive and they're very nasty, it takes all the oxygen out of the room for everything else, and it obviates, it just negates any other conversation from happening on any other issue, many of which could provide great opportunity for us as a whole.
Sure. And that's exactly it. I mean, a lot of these folks that are raising these issues, number one, yes, they do have, many of them do have means. Number two, many of them have spent a fair amount of time in the classroom, and again, should know better from that perspective. Many of whom have also gone to public schools and most likely received grants and those scholarships at the university level, in some cases public schools, but they benefited from public funding then, but somehow oppose it now in the form of public health spending. And then also the willingness from people that you think should know better to also articulate the wildest conspiracy theories. Whether, oh, this is just preparing us for some nefarious government plot. And you just wonder, where's the critical thought here? But apparently you can get away with saying anything. I mean, it really, this goes to the point of, the democratization of the flow of communications that social media has allowed us to really transfer information very quickly and instantaneously worldwide. But a lot of that information is garbage. And we're really seeing that as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, it is the Tower of Babel. I mean, this is this was exactly what it's in the Bible. Wow, there's a certain segment of the audience who will like that. But I realize that we have gone from schools to like a totally bigger picture of the ignorance of some people and the opportunity that we are missing here as a society because of the ignorance of some people. But to bring this balloon down to earth as we start to glide in towards the landing, I cannot ignore the 5-star video that was put forth by Australian television, which, to your point, Jason, numbskulls around the world have posted about hydroxychloroquine, or whatever the hell it is, from, I believe the name of the organization is Frontline Doctors of America, who's one of their spokesmen, and they did make sure to bring out a doctor. I mean, we don't know if they're doctors. I'm assuming they're doctors, but this doctor happened to be a woman of color. And amongst her many, not sure, peer citations, I might be reaching out to her directly to ask for those peer citations. But one of her assertions was that people are sick because they dream too often of having sex with demons or witches. Based on whatever your gender preference is, although my understanding is that either can be of either gender. But that's what's making us sick. Too much dreaming of sex with demons and witches. So obviously, that's it.
Well, Bill, that is on its surface apparent. Yeah,
the bum. What can I say?
Oh God! But I came across her trending today, and I'm like, what is this topic that's trending? But unfortunately, I clicked on it and I read that as well. And the fact that the leader of the free world is apparently retweeting some of her stuff. Again, it just makes you wonder how much of a documentary the Idiocracy, the movie, really was. But we're starting along that path.
Well, sir. Do we have any green shoots? Do we have anything positive to leave the viewing / listening audience with? I'm not sure how this is going for our hits. I'm not sure how this is going for our buy rate. I mean, remember, we have that plan to do the New Year's Eve pay-per-view.
Oh yeah. Oh, no. we'll edit that in post. No, but the one thing, if there's one thing that's positive, I think some of the negative reaction to distance learning, virtual learning, was as a result of how it was rolled out in many districts in the spring, when the knowledge base wasn't what it was, and it took longer to roll out than it should have. I do think we're going to see a much more impressive rollout of synchronous and asynchronous learning. I think the experience is going to be much better for the students, the parents, the teachers. And I do think they'll get an enriched experience in terms of the content that they'll receive, starting in the fall. So I think in that regard, we can look to a better next few months than, say, March and April were.
And I will add to that nobody in big education at any level, from preschool up through Harvard Med, is twirling their mustache, wringing their hands, going, "I'm going to make you learn at home and like it." That's just not happening. That's just not. Oh, careful. That's just not reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I mean, we've both been longtime writers of the blog medium, and one of the biggest joys in my writing my blog was just that kind of reflecting people's ridiculousness back on themselves and just showing them how ridiculous they are. And it's not that I still don't like that, but now I just want to, say to a lot of people in Howard County, Maryland, the United States, and the world, grow the F up. Just grow the F up. Do the things that you know how to do. Be the person your mommy and daddy taught you how to be. Stop whining. Stop complaining. Stop your griping. Do the next right thing and grow the F up. It's not hard. It's not hard. Be thankful for what you have, because most of you, if you're listening to this podcast, are blessed beyond belief. You probably got more than you deserve. And that's not a bad thing. You worked hard. That's good. Now grow the F up and stop complaining. Pay attention. Do the things you're being asked to do. Nobody has ever, since March 12th, when this started to affect me, nobody has asked me to give up anything that I haven't been willing to give. And that is the case. That is the case here. That is what we're asking. And that is what society asks. Each of us has a societal responsibility. So part of grow the F up is understand that. We were all taught that in 3rd or 4th grade. We are all part of a country. We all have a responsibility. We all stand up and we say the Pledge of Allegiance. We all, celebrate July 4th. Look at the fireworks. Come on. I would just grow the F up.
Well said.
I don't know how better to say it. It's so tiring. So Jason, flash opinion from you, sir.
Sure.
Over under date on the end of the Major League Baseball season.
Oh gosh. The way it's going now, when is it supposed to end right now? At the end of September?
Well, yeah, let's just go regular season. Regular season is supposed to end September 30th.
Yeah.
If you think there's postseason, then say September 30th.
I don't know. I don't have a good feeling about it. Yeah. What is it now? July 28th? August 18th.
Yeah, I am actually going to go. I'm going to go a week later.
Okay.
I'm going to go August 24th.
Okay.
I mean, right before right before Labor Day. I mean, we've seen what they do now. I have to admit, I don't enjoy this fact that they are unbalancing the schedule and kind of coming up with these things as they go. I mean, I probably think it should be like a stay alive game.
Like, who's healthy? Where can we send this team tomorrow?
You know, right. You know, and you know, next thing you know, the Mariners are going to be playing the Cebu Lions over in Japan. and you know, the Orioles and the Tampa Bay Devil Rays will start their barnstorming tour of Europe. Germany's best. I mean, it's just, it looks like it. I hope that, I mean, God bless. I hope everybody on the Marlins is fine. There's the Red Sox pitcher who used to be an Orioles farmhand, who now has a permanent heart condition, thanks to his coronavirus. So again, even if you're young, it hurts you. You know, so we don't want any, obviously, you know, neither of us want anybody to be seriously ill or die, but I have to think that, you know, I mean, it's going to be 3 strikes and you're out, right? And I think this is the first one, and 2 more things like this happen, and I think it's done. Yeah. And I give it about 4 more weeks for that to happen.
That's right.
Well, we're now at the end of another fine podcast production, but please join us on Friday. We will be with David Parrish, the author of the book Losing John, written about the death of a young Columbia man in 1990. And we will be looking at not just that book and talking about David's experiences in writing that book, but also the applicability of some of the things that were experienced in that book and how they're applicable to police treatment of citizens today. So it should be a pretty interesting episode. You won't want to miss it. Jason, any final thoughts?
Final thoughts? Gosh, just be safe out there. There you go.
I like it. It's better, and especially after the police department in Howard County posted that video of people running red lights. That is on the precipice of going viral.
Oh yeah, it's unnerving.
Fortunately, no accidents yet. So for Jason, I'm Bill. You have been listening or watching Forward Maryland. We'll see you again on Friday. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.